9:41, but going to give him plenty of time here. It is my pleasure to welcome you back to Laramie Live on KUWB, but also welcome into the studio Tim Chesnut, one of our county commissioners. You'll be on the ballot. It's a crowded race this year. Is that surprising to you a little bit, Tim?
No, not so much. It's I think a lot of times people file late, and it gets to that late period. No one sees anybody filing, so people are like getting their friends or their family. Hey, you should run. You know, we need somebody out there running. And I think some people file and then they don't really. Once they see there's 11 people there, they're like, oh no, I didn't really want to do this.
I don't think we haven't had anybody withdraw from this race. I know there's been a couple other areas where people have withdrawn from races, but so you're one of the couple incumbents running here, and I know we're going to get 4 people to move on from Tuesday to the general election. First of all, I guess I'll start with why are you running again? Let's start there.
Well, I really enjoy the job. I've done it for quite a while now, and it's been a really interesting last 2 years. I think probably the most productive years we've had as county commissioner, and especially with the Pilot Hill project. You know, things you want to see come to fruition and do the job and see that actually happens. And I think Pilot Hills is key, but there's a lot of things coming up that I think are really important. The city and the county are past due on updating the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan. That's something I'm really interested in seeing what happens with that. The current commissioners that I'm on with, I think it's going to be interesting because it's a lot different makeup than it was 6 years ago when we first adopted the Casper Aquifer Plan.
Okay, so that's one of your issues. What else is, as you've been out campaigning and people know that you're running for re-election, what else have you discussed with citizens around the county here?
Well, I think land use planning is really big right now. This last legislative session, Senate File 14, took the ability for the city away to have a say in the donut area, the 1 mile area around the city, where it's planning with the city and the county on how growth happens. So I think that's a really big issue. I think we need to be working with the city, and we need to, planning is key. You see other communities and how they've grown. Cheyenne's boxed themselves in with a lot of small ranchette, small or larger acre, 5 acre, 10 acre parcels right around the city that boxes the city in, and they don't have the ability to grow. Cheyenne has similar things that we do, that where they've got the Air Force Base on one side, so there's no growth there. We've got the university on that doesn't allow us for growth in a lot of areas. So we really need to be working with the city, planning streets, utilities, and letting the city grow in areas where we know it's going to grow, whether it be economically with businesses or with housing subdivisions.
I've heard some comments, and I actually had a candidate on yesterday that folks in the county have been saying, some of you on the commission presently are not necessarily hearing as much and doing as much around the county. It's been more focused on Laramie. What's your response to that?
Oh, I don't think that's true, and I don't think people pay attention to a lot of stuff that's going on. Jackie Gonzalez, the county clerk, told us in June we had over 400 land sales or acquisitions. So there's a lot of activity going in the county. There's business going in the county. It's in some of the areas we've got we do have growth, especially in Rock River. I mean, I think people are going to see we've got wind projects for the first time now in Albany County. The Boswell Springs project is finally starting, and that's going to be the first wind project that's entirely in Albany County.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if people say we're not looking at things outside the county. We've got right now 3 wind projects that are going in, and then last night in Rawlins there was a hearing on the Gateway West transmission lines. So we're finally getting some wind turbines and wind power energy, but one of the problems with Albany County, there was no way to get the energy out. Now finally with this Gateway West project, we're going to be getting some transmission lines going from Albany County across Natrona County, Carbon County, and Sweetwater County to finally get this energy out here, and I think it's going to be a boom. We've got, I don't think people know or pay attention to some of the things. Rock River right now, with just the industrial siding, with these 3 wind projects and the Gateway, they're going to get millions of dollars literally coming into Medicine Bow and Rock River.
Wow.
Upgrade their infrastructure, their streets, their water and the sewer, and law enforcement. I mean, we don't have law enforcement out there. We got the first payment from the Boswell Springs project yesterday, and one of the big projects that Albany County is concerned with is law enforcement. And that's going to allow us to get some law enforcement up there that we have not had in my tenure as county commissioner.
What else are you hearing from county residents? What are some of the other big issues that they've kind of proposed or talked with you in terms of being around the county, whether it's Rock River or Bosler or Woods Landing or Centennial or just different parts of the county? Anything else that people have kind of come to you about?
Well, I think law enforcement's key. We have the sheriff's office is so low staffed right now. We've got 4 officers on patrol at any time, and this is a big county. I mean, we're the size of New Jersey, and that's tough. So I think what I hear from a lot of the people, especially in the northern part of the county, is law enforcement. I think one of the things that we've been focusing on, and people are really concerned about, especially when you see the high-profile fire that we had this year, is fire protection, because it's a tinderbox out there. It's not if a fire happens, it's when a fire happens. So we've been really big in proactive with the volunteer fire departments and getting equipment. This last weekend, the volunteer fire department up by Waikola had their annual chili cook-off and raised over $71,000.
Nice.
That's been big, and every one of those dollars that comes in, we can leverage with grant money, getting equipment, and with the specific purpose tax and things like that, we can kind of help those guys out, upgrading their equipment, getting better equipment. I think one of the key issues is roads, and one of the things that we've done and put forward on this specific purpose tax is a lot of money for the road and bridge department to either buy equipment, materials. And roads are always a big concern. This last term, we've opened 2 gravel pits that we have not had in the county for a long time, improved some of the roads. I mean, like, some of the roads out in the county are just rock and just washboard. We've done a lot in the last few years to upgrade those. Dinwiddie Road out by Centennial has always been just, you're driving on rocks, that glacial moraine with all the rocks and out there. And that road is really nice now. We don't have a huge budget in Albany County, so it's really tough to get money funneled into road and bridge to do more than just blade the roads twice a year.
We're talking with County Commissioner candidate Tim Chesnut. He's one of the incumbents running in the primary election coming up on Tuesday. Polls open at 7, will close at 7. You talked about it. From an economic standpoint, we are one of the poorest counties, if not the poorest in the state. How much of a challenge is that when you have such kind of a restricted budget with what you guys want to do?
Well, I think it really came to highlight a couple of years ago when we had the budget crisis that we did. And the entire state, when the mineral industry comes down, then it affects the entire state. One of the things we've relied on is over-the-cap and hardship money from the state, which is dried up in the last few years. We've been able to save a lot of that money, which helped us a lot because we don't use that money for operations. We don't pay people with it. We try to do projects with it because that money goes away, then you lose people. We had a really tough year last year where we laid off 19 employees in the county, and in the time I've been on the county commission, we have never had to lay off employees. The county employees stepped up and have done an amazing job, and cross-trained and done things with different departments that helped us a lot to keep things going. In the last year, things have come up a little bit. We've returned some of those positions. We've had some part-time positions that we've filled in, but now we're getting it to a stable point, and it's a really tough juggling act with the county funds because the money has dried up from the state, and we've had to do the best that we can with but property taxes have been up. We went up 4% this last year, so that helped us out. And as long as we get those 400 land acquisitions transactions a month like we did in June, that's going to help everyone because that gets the property values up and that gets more money into the operations of the county government.
Is it a situation where you guys are preparing for maybe one day that funds do not come from the state, that they basically kind of cut it off? I mean, you talked about it's been drying up. Are we prepared here in Albany County, I guess? And what do you envision in the future of that possibility of having to deal with no funds coming from the state?
Yeah, we're there now. We're not getting that money from the state, and the legislature didn't put anything into that in the biennium. So we know that money's not there. So we're there now. We've when we had that budget crisis a few years ago, when we had to cut 19% of our budget, we knew that was coming. So we're lean. We at a level right now. We know that the state money's not coming in. So we're focusing on what we actually have and what is in the future. Right now, a lot of people don't know what PILT is. That's payment in lieu of taxes. So if you have the federal government owns a large percentage of your county, you get money from the federal government through the PILT funds. That's been in a lot of flex the last few years. It's gone up and down. We weren't even a lot of times we're not sure until July when our budget is finalized whether we're going to get that money at all. We did get that money this year, but right now we have a work session coming up on the 28th to talk about. There's a nationwide lawsuit to sue the federal government about PILT funds. We're going to weigh whether or not we're going to get into that. That would pay back past monies that were BILT is a federally mandated program that the federal government is supposed to fund. They have not done that. So with this lawsuit, if we join the lawsuit and win, it's not going to be a lot of money coming in, but it's going to kind of hopefully open the eyes of our legislators in Washington that the counties, the West needs money where we have large pieces of land that's owned by the federal government that we cannot afford to manage.
Yeah, I understand that. Again, we're visiting with County Commissioner Tim Chesnut. He's an incumbent running for re-election here in 2018 as we get to the primary election coming up on Tuesday. In terms of other things that are kind of popping up, you mentioned one of the big topics has been the Pilot Hill Land Project, and that got going about this time a year ago was when you guys made the announcement. Where are we kind of at on that? And because I know a lot of it was, some of the concern early was, well, how are we going to pay for this? And then it's like, well, we're not going to pay for it out of the budget. We're going to raise funds. How is that going from your perspective, would you say, as one of the current county commissioners?
Well, right now everything's looking really good. We're in a kind of a holding pattern right now, waiting for the state land board to decide whether or not the land swap that's proposed is going to happen. I think it's really promising, everything that I've talked to from the legislators and the land board, it's going to be a positive situation. I think what parcels are swapped out with public land to private land are going to be interesting, and that's kind of the key focus. There was a big meeting a couple nights ago, a funding meeting for the Pilot Hill project. Everything's looking really good. We hope that we're only going to have to raise maybe now $3 million rather than $14 million.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of that money has already been raised. So it's super positive. This is going to happen, and we're all really encouraged that is going to be the future of Laramie.
Now, how about funds to maintain that land once we acquire it, if that actually goes through?
That's what this $3.5 million that we're raising right now is for. The land purchase and the swap will take care of getting the land. $3.5 million will be for managing the land, doing trails, things like that. And then the partnerships, there was a meeting just last week, the first meeting that we've had with the state parks, whether or not state parks may take over that piece of land.
Okay.
If state parks takes over that piece of land, they've got a lot of money and expertise in doing that. And one of the main things is going to be getting established trails, getting people in places where they need to be, and getting whatever, picnic benches, bathrooms, those are the things, those concerns. That's the money that we're raising right now for that. Looking forward to getting the land, we're going to get the land, it's going to happen. Now we need to raise the money to manage it.
Again, County Commissioner Tim Chesnut's in studio with me. It's Let Me Live on KWB in a Friday morning. We're just days away from the election. I mentioned the crowded field this year. How do you feel you differentiate yourself from the rest of this field that's running right now and all the people that have kind of popped in here?
Well, I think experience and actually knowing what the job is. It's been frustrating. There was a letter to the editor the other day about none of the county commissioner candidates, other than the incumbents, have ever even been to a county commission meeting. They don't know the job they're getting into. A lot of times what the frustration is when you hear people at events, well, I'm not going to raise your taxes and I'm not going to raise your fees. Well, that's not what you can do as a county commissioner. We do not have the ability to raise taxes. That's a function of state government. We don't have the ability to raise fees. Most of those fees, almost all of those fees, are set by statute. The only fees that we can raise or lower, and that's part of funding county government is tough, is the planning department. And you don't want to make planning fees so high that it's restricted for people to come in and do business. So that's been an interesting thing. But with the 11 candidates that are running, I think it's a great field. I think people are going to have a great opportunity to pick good candidates. Even the people that, and I was the same way when I became a county commissioner. You don't know what your job is until you get there. So I encourage all the candidates to come to county commissioner meetings, find out what we're doing, find out what the job is before you get in there and you're just overwhelmed with what it is, because it's a big job and there's different issues that come up. Even now, as long as I've been doing it, we come up with different things almost every meeting.
Well, that's interesting that you say that different things kind of come to fruition. Lastly, I'll give you the floor here before I run out of time here. I want to give you the floor here to just kind of appeal to the voters and why they should vote for you, Tim.
Well, I think I've got a proven track record. I think people know and appreciate what I've done. I think I work well with all county offices, county officials, and the employees. But one thing I just want to close with the sales tax, I really encourage people to get out and vote, as you guys have done. We need to get the young people and get people out to vote. But with the 6-penny sales tax, people need to know what's on the ballot. It's a long ballot. We've been restricted by the state to be super specific. So the ballot just on the tax is 2 pages. It's a long read. When you get into the ballot to cast your ballot, if you haven't read that, you may not have the time to do that. Please go to the county clerk's office, get the ballot, look and see what it is, see if it's something you can support, but make sure you know what you're getting into before you get in there, because it is a long proposition. And I think what the city, the county, and Rock River have put together are really positive, but you really need to know what you're voting for before you get in there, and know what your candidates are, and just try to do your homework before you get into the ballot box.
All right, it is coming up on Tuesday. I know absentee balloting's been going on since early July. Those have got to be done and in by Monday, but you can go to the polls and vote 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Jen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, David, for all that you do for the county and the city government to let people know what's going on.